just feel free to get those to us as well. The other thing is that the districts can only call one special election per year. The next aspect is looking at the informational campaign, informational pieces that that happen around the bond issue, talking about district's role and then support committee roles. The district runs a strictly informational campaign that's generally run by the district administration, the board. In some cases it's run strictly by the superintendent. Other cases the board plays a big role in that. But it's really it's getting the information out to the voters so that they can make effective decisions on which way to vote. It's not telling them to vote one way or another, but it's providing enough information so that they can make an informed vote, but then also encouraging people to come out to vote as well. Being available for town hall meetings, Q&As. Sometimes we'll send out mailers that explain a lot of the stuff that is brought up in the town hall meetings. And then on the sort of running parallel to that is a promotional campaign, or sometimes called a Vote Yes Committee. And they're a group that's organized to support the successful passage of the bond issue. It's like any political campaign, they're organized to ensure that people get out and vote yes for the bond issue. And they're for the most part, they're pretty integral to, or they're pretty important in getting that message out about the bond issue in a manner, and because they're separate from the district, they can get it out in a manner that says, go out and vote yes for the bond issue. And so there's the two committees run parallel during the process. Obviously the promotion and the vote yes can't be paid for with any district funds or the like. And again, just going again over the district's role in the process of informing the voters of the bond issue, what it entails in its scope, that there's accurate information out there about the bond issue. Oftentimes we'll hold town hall meetings and Q&A sessions that answer questions that patrons have. As Elizabeth mentioned, hitting like back to school time frames to when parents and people are coming to school for various functions is a good opportunity to not to have a special meeting, but to have a table set up at football games, at back to school enrollment time frames, to really inform people about the bond issue. Also kind of inform about the bond issue, what it's going to cost and what it's going to look like. People want to know we've developed plans and will continue to develop, and kind of the look of that, look of the plans as well. Oftentimes that information is hosted on the district's website as a good resource for people to go to. And throughout the process, HTK, we always support the districts, and part of the services that we provide is furthering those plans and renderings. If there's questions that come up that aren't explained clearly in the current plan, we'll go back and reformat or make sure that the plans, the information that you have accurately answers the questions that people have. We've also assisted with brochures and mailer type kind of informational collateral.
We've been through a lot of bond issues over our years. Educational design is what we do, and so we'll be a resource to you guys throughout this, and even being available at your town hall meetings, that kind of thing. You know, it needs to be you guys or your committees that kind of run the meetings, because you guys are who the community trusts. But we'll be sitting there beside you to help answer questions, and when there are more technical questions or questions about hours, that kind of thing, we'll be there.
Can you guide us on the level of detail that's provided
It can be tough, in addition
guide us
to
on what we need to be sharing specifically.
you have a lot going on. I mean, there will be a lot involved in this bond issue. So you can't just throw one plan up there and let them know that's how it is. So we can kind of break it down by school to let people know, what each school is getting, because, everybody's going to want to know what their school is getting. And so it's, their elementary school, their, middle school. And so you have to make sure there's parity there about the information you're providing. But yeah, we'll be there to help you through all of that.
And then on that parallel track of a promotional committee, that's a organized committee outside of the district, kind of outside of the board and outside of the district administration, but they're there to facilitate and get out the vote yes message for the campaign. Because they don't use district dollars for it, they must raise do fundraising for that campaign, help identify the voters and make sure they turn out to the polls, look for speaking engagements, and really both committees look for speaking engagements through community organizations, Chamber of Commerce, neighborhood groups, any real community organization that you can make a point to connect with. And then also there's aspects that both campaigns can actually use aspects of social media, whether it be a website or Facebook or Twitter, or any of those kind of free avenues for marketing or for getting the message out. And again, HTK, as part of what we do, support those efforts for promotion of the bond issue. This next couple of slides go into specifically looking at what the organization of that support committee looks like, kind of what we see from past examples of kind of what you need in place to have a successful support committee for it. And the aspects of fundraising to raise dollars for campaign materials, public relations committee that develops a lot of kind of the branding, the look of the campaign, the message that the Vote Yes committee sent, or the Vote Yes message, and then they get out the vote, which is kind of your voter, goes out and voter registration, looking at and identifying who those voters are and making sure that they ultimately turn out to the polls. There'll be, once we get into it, we'll identify if there's a block of, or if there's 13,000 some eligible voters, will get drilled down to what's your typical voter turnout for these kind of elections. And then you'll really get down to, okay, we need this many to pass this bond issue, we need X number of votes to make that happen, and really focus on getting those people out to the polls. Along with a speakers bureau, not everybody's comfortable speaking in public about things, so that identify people that are good about speaking and can speak kind of with a unified voice about the bond issue and why people should support the bond issue. All these kind of main committees are supported by a hefty team of volunteers that maybe doesn't want to run a committee, but wants to help in some manner, whether it be professional help in terms of some in-kind services through some local businesses, or just basic manpower to get jobs done. Briefly run through those four committees, kind of what their responsibilities are. And again, this is kind of just an overview of this when we get into it, and once those people that are interested in the committee are identified, we've got what we call kind of a bond issue manual that is kind of a training guide, or not training guide, but also further spells out what and when
We didn't want to bore you with all those details tonight.
tasks need to happen. So but I'll run through everything. the fundraising committee, they obviously need to help identify, with the PR committee, identify a budget. A lot of that, if you're mailing pieces, a lot of that budget is for postage, just to get stuff mailed out to. So we look at, we've seen a range of bond issues that have run on $5,000 and some that have run on a lot more than that.
To raise a fair amount of money, and some are not. It just depends on how you want to run your campaign. And overall, that's one thing that we want to stress, is that you guys know your community and you know how your community will best respond. And so we're here to kind of help you, guide in the direction once we have some more conversations with you guys and see how you want us to proceed.
And so in that, it's also soliciting donations, whether they be monetary or in kind. The fundraising committee is kind of the treasurer of the committee, so we do things like establish banking accounts and maintain the financial records of the...
I would add that in-kind portion is very important to you guys. If you've got a local printer in town that wants to support the bond issue, they may give you a discount on printing. If you've got somebody that's excited about it and they have a billboard in town, they may put your message on the billboard. So we can also talk to you about some of those things that can really help facilitate the process without costing a lot of dollars.
The Public Relations Committee, that's kind of I wouldn't say the head committee, but that's all the others kind of stem off of that. They really develop the campaign branding, what is kind of the slogan that the Vote Yes Committee uses. There's things like Vote Yes for our kids, or Vote Yes for the future of the district, things like that, just kind of developing a campaign brand look to it, so that everything that comes out from the committee is a consistent look and feel and message. Developing things like postcards and yard signs and buttons and posters and those kind of things, and we will support, we've got examples of stuff that we've done in other districts, and so we'll support the committees with those efforts. Advertising in local media, again, using social media as a tool to really engage with the voters, and then coordinating efforts with the Speakers Bureau, and either identifying organizations to go and speak to, or if the Speakers Bureau speaker comes back and says, I had these questions asked to me and I need more information, or I need something that says it differently, to assist them with that. The Get Out the Vote Committee is the kind of the vote builder, the ones that really go out and identify yes, we have these people that were for sure voting yes, and then utilizing the voter registration data that's available to really identify who those people are that are coming out to the polls, and making sure that they turn out. That can be done through phone banking, through door-to-door, and then on election day, again, as if there's people that need transportation to the polls, poll watchers, reminding people to get out and vote. Speakers Bureau, like I said earlier, those are the people that are comfortable speaking about the bond issue. As part of its bond issue manual, there'll be some. They're not form, or they're not scripts, but we can start to help do some of that training in terms of here's how to present the scope of work in a concise manner.
And we can arm those speakers with all the facts and figures that they need, and we kind of know what some of the hot buttons are and what the public's going to ask, what they're going to be more concerned about, so we can kind of arm you guys with those facts so those people are more comfortable making these presentations.
I think, again, too, is your community and know what organizations to get in contact with, whether they're business organizations or neighborhood groups, other civic groups, be available for interviews on the radio, letters to the editor, those kind of things throughout the community. And supporting all that is an effective volunteer coordinator and a base of volunteers, and that volunteer coordinator is oftentimes connected in with other organizations in the community and say, I need committees can say, I need 10 people to help me walk this part of town on a Saturday, and the volunteer coordinator can really help facilitate matching the people that want to volunteer their skills with the needs that are presented.
And that's an important role because eventually people get burned out. And so it's nice if you can have a big group of people that you can call on and say, I need 2 hours of your time this week. And they will give 2 hours of their time this week. They will not give 10 hours of their time 3 times a week. So it's important to have that big base and somebody to kind of manage that effort.
The last slide, or close to the last slide, and I've touched on it briefly throughout this, kind of what HTK, the support that HTK gives through continuing through this process, through the bond issue. The bottom line is that we understand the complete package of the construction, what the scope of the work is, the financing aspects of it, and then what it takes, the campaign, what's involved in running an effective campaign, both informationally and promotionally.
I might add to that. Dean had asked us to kind of speak to some timelines and that kind of thing, and I know that you guys are excited about this and anxious to get started. One thing I would give a bit of advice is you don't want to start too soon, because it allows for some of the misinformation out there. If you start talking about it right now and start your campaign, get everybody excited, that rolls for a little while, and then it's kind of forgotten about, and you have misinformation out there. And so there are times when we will suggest, just that 3-month, kind of give information along the way, but that 3-month hard-hit campaign, right before the bond vote, to keep people excited about it. So, that's something that, again, we can work with you on and decide timeframes. Maybe November is not when you want to have the bond issue. That's going to be up to you guys, but we can kind of work with you on those timelines.
And it goes back to that schedule or that timeline on page 5 that kind of preliminary looked at between now and then, what does a November of 2015 bond issue look like in terms of what we need to do between now and then. So that, going back to that green box can shift right or left on the schedule.
And before we get into Zach's kind of construction schedule, are there any questions that you guys have about that bond process, or what your process is, or how we're involved, or what we can do for you?
No, we just hit you with a lot of information. And
So given that we have a general election in April, there's no way we could get this done?
It's possible. Yeah, it's absolutely possible. It's something that you guys would have to, be ready for and be ready to make that resolution. It would come quickly. But if that's something you're
Have you seen it done that quick?
What?
Have you seen it done?
Yes.
The size of a bond?
The size of the bond, I can't guarantee that I've seen it for the size of the bond. We did Siemens Schools pretty quickly. I can't remember the time frame on that, and it was $59 million, I believe. Honestly, for you guys, it depends on the level of support that you have and how quickly you can get information out there.
Well, I guess the question, when you talk about how you really only want to do that blitz of information for 3 months, why can't we do that January, February, and March? If the rest are really planning and getting ready for that, I know it's quick, but if it's saving us $20,000 and we would get a higher voter turnout,
You would have a higher voter turnout for that election.
or it's 2 pros.
What's the typical success rate though? We've got spring break and they're just coming off the holidays.
And it varies by district. Now, I don't have that stat for you. It really varies by district. We've had some that have not been successful in some of our smaller districts because they're nervous.
What is it?
Are you-
Like you understand 3 months is pretty good, but this is a pretty comprehensive plan here. It comes to quite a bit.
It is.
Take longer than 3 or should it be like
But
that?
the only thing is, it can be tough because the longer you spread it out, there's a lot more talking that goes on. And sometimes that's not necessarily a positive thing because you get a lot of misinformation. You're going to be surprised, when you kind of start this, what you're hearing. All of a sudden, you guys are going to be doing, 2 or 3 brand new swimming pools.
Yeah.
But,
People being surprised.
yeah, well, we've seen a lot of interesting things.
And then we're asking a bunch of volunteers to work over November and December to get ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that is very important, and you guys are aware of this, but is kind of that transparency of everybody needs to know they have the opportunity to learn about this. So if you hold 3 well-publicized town hall meetings, put it in the paper, let everybody know you're doing this, and so that they can come and learn about the bond issue, so that they can ask questions. What you don't want is somebody, it gets to be election time and somebody says, we didn't even know they were doing this. They didn't tell us anything about it, so I'm not voting for it. And that will happen, even
That'll
if
still
you do a
happen.
great job of publicizing. But if you've got school functions that you can be at, if you've got time to facilitate those meetings, it's possible. But again, it's up to you guys knowing your community and what you think they will support.
What are some typical other strategies? Because you mentioned town hall meetings, you mentioned social media. Is there anything that can be done at the school?
Absolutely.
Besides
There's quite a bit that can be done at the schools. Yes, I mean, again, the district is able to provide as much information as you want. So you can send, backpack stuffers home. You can have, at school functions, you can have a big information table. If you've got a school newsletter, you can put information in that. I mean, and the district can do even a mailer that outlines what's going on in bond issues, what the tax implications are, how this is going to affect each person. You're not able to say, you need to get out and vote yes for this. You can say, we want you informed. And so there are a lot of things you can do. And again, a lot of those school functions and parent-teacher conferences and parent nights and, booster clubs, PTOs, it goes on and on. If you've got a good group that will spend the time, then there are lots of opportunities.
And Ed, because you're touching on, you've got so many buildings that you're touching on with each project really stands alone, so it would warrant that at each school building there would be a poster up that would have probably a plan that's similar to what has been developed for the Facility Needs Committee, a plan, and then kind of just a bulleted item that says this is what's going to happen at this project or at this facility.
And that's something we could help you with, like, 24 by 36 foam core that's got the plan on it. This is what's happening at your school.
And that's something that then can go up as soon as it's ready at each of the school, but as soon as the board has said, okay, this is what we're doing, and those plans are ready to go, that can go up on the district's website. It can go, each poster can go up at each of the school buildings. There can be, the mailers can be tailored to each school so that it says this is what we're doing as a district, but here, Laughlin, this is what's happening at your school. And so those kind of pieces, and those informational pieces, the district can do as much or as little as they need to get it out there.
It's important that people are informed, and that's the bottom line, is that, a lot of people are excited about their schools and, want the schools to succeed and want good things to happen. So you have a positive feeling behind it, but they have to be informed.
I think the general election time for April, I started with the Facility Needs Committee, and I've been through this district upside and down, and there's no doubt that the need exists. There is no doubt about that, and we've got to let everybody know that. However, going back a year and a half, we've had some struggles, and there's an obligation that this board has to show that the direction we're going, the fiscal responsibility, the changes that are both positive and the growth that we want to promote. I would just have a hard time thinking that the next general election, while saving $20,000, $30,000 would be fantastic. if I look at it from the devil's advocate role as just a patron of the community, which I also am, there is no way I would be ready for something like that. Because I haven't seen, what has this board showed me, would be the question that I would ask. And they spent 10, 15 minutes talking about checking the pulse of the community. There's a large faction of the community that shares that has that question, what are you doing? So, well, I'm eager to start it. I'm excited about starting this. I want to get into it. I think April's general election, for me, I think it would have a lot of shock to it. Just a lot of shock.
The piece I'm hung up on, though, is that when you talk about 6 to 8 months, the communication is really in that last 3 months. Is that what you're saying?
The big push, I mean, where you have your, yes committees, and that big push is generally in that last 3 months. Part of the problem is that people also, kind of get burned out. You've got people who are excited and they're ready to go, and they'll make a push. Well, then it gets to be, I've been talking about this for a month. And so as it gets closer to the election, then you don't have that excitement and that reminder for everybody to vote. The thing is, a lot of people are willing to support this bond issue, and they're willing to pay the taxes that come along with it. But they don't always vote. And it's interesting. I mean, we've been through bond issues where we've had amazing, great support, but that haven't passed. I worked late today, the kids were sick, it's cold out, I don't want to go vote, I'm fine with it, but I'm not going to go vote. So it's important to have that big push of telling people, I'm thankful that you support it, I also took a vote. Because again, you would be surprised at how many just don't make it to poll that day.
Part of that 6 to 8 month time frame, though, too, is knowing that during summer that there may be some lag in terms of communications with people, and so that's kind of the 6th to 8th month is on the long end for a bond issue campaign, but that's running it through a summer. We really, on that page and it's hard to see on here, but on page, I think it's page 5, it's really looking at, if it were November, it's looking at this 3 months right here prior to it, and the darker green or the medium green as kind of that main campaign, back to school campaign, picking it a little bit up, saying that at the end of the school year, this is what to expect, that we're going to be talking about come in the fall. But then this kind of lighter green is looking at, if you were to do a patron survey, that time frame in the kind of March, April, and then getting those results back and really understanding what they found through the survey. If there were strong leanings one way or another in some of the issues, if there were some strong issues related to certain projects within the bond issue, or if they found other district issues that needed to be addressed, that there's time in there to kind of reevaluate the scope of it. So that's kind of what all falls. The 6th to 8th month isn't meeting every week to plan for this thing. That really takes place in those last 3 months.
It's just hard over the summer. People are on vacations. Your volunteers are busy. They're not as willing to get out and do as much. And so you can, if you do go with November, you can send out something midsummer from the district that says, be ready for exciting news about our bond issue, coming up this fall, just to get people primed about it. But again, that last 3 months is a good push.
But also knowing that because there's not a general election in November of 15, you're not as confined to hitting that November timeframe. This could push forward. I think this could easily push forward 30 to 45 days into September, so that it's really, because you've got a lot of that back to school, you've got a lot of good opportunities to really get in front of people, or have people get in front of you, either through enrollment times or back to school events. So there's a lot of lot of opportunity to get the word out right as you get back to school, and that this green box could push into September pretty easily, I think, especially if you know going out of this school year what you're going to do, and kind of have that message and those committees and those people identified that they're going to be out supporting it. And they can, obviously, business organizations will run through the summer, and so they can be starting to message the community through the summer as well. I want to, just before I let Dustin talk, I want to just run through briefly kind of what the big picture construction schedule looks like. And you have it in front of you, and that's probably easier to see than on the screen. On page 17, the last page in there. That purple line here is in November of 2014. That's a hypothetical start date of passing a bond issue and then starting design work and then construction. We always try to target opening buildings or turning buildings over from a contractor to the district in midsummer, so that you've got a month at least to get moved into the building before you start school. That's not always possible. Looking at kind of your local workforce, you don't want to overstress your local workforce, because that will drive up costs, because there won't be as much construction workers available to do projects. So trying to spread this out over the course of, it'll be spread out over the course of about a 3-year time frame. A couple of the projects identified that are big needs are in terms of classroom space, Roosevelt and Wilson. Those would get started right out of the gate already, to try and get Roosevelt in operation by the fall of 2017. As at a November start date is a pretty compressed schedule, both on the design time and the construction aspects. So if that bond issue were to push forward a couple months, that would give you kind of ease this allow the construction time frame to lengthen, and you put less stress on the contractor, which generally equals they're more, your bids are better if they don't have to account for overtime, working nights and weekends to get a project done in a compressed schedule. So we haven't really talked about we've talked about each of the projects individually through the facility needs committee process, but we haven't really looked at what the kind of that construction schedule would be. And this then plays into the numbers there are associated with the kind of soft costs of a project and then construction costs of a project, and that then totals per year to look at the frequency of issuing and selling the bonds, so that you time that so that you get money in corresponding to when you need to pay money out.
And we provided this to Dustin so he can kind of schedule your financing for what we see happening for you guys.
And so I think that's, Dustin, I think if you're ready to...
Do you guys have any other questions of us? I mean, we'll still be here.
We'll be, yeah.
At what point in time do basically artist revision to anything where you typically see this in Twitter numbers? Like those people that can't comprehend
Sure.
that number, because they don't understand what do I get for that dollar amount.
Part of that, I mean, that's a lot of it would come from what's the information that's been produced for the Facility Needs Committee. It would be expanded upon, and that really can come really as soon as you guys are ready to do that. That information can be, we've got a lot of it. There's some of the, in terms of some of the rendering and more what does it actually look like when I approach the building. We've been mostly working in plan view right now, but that would be, as soon as you guys are ready to kind of take that next step to go towards a bond issue, that would be a relatively, I mean, it's something that we could get to you.
We
I
can
mean,
produce some graphic information so that people can kind of see, if there's an addition on the building, this is the existing building, and here's where the addition goes, and, a vague idea of what it looks like, until we've really sat down and spent time with your administration, your teachers, a lot of time, we don't know what everything's going to look like, so we need to know what you need first. But we can also provide some floor plans that will kind of block the different areas. We're going to have a classroom addition here, we're going to add the new gym over here, that kind of thing. So we can provide you, once you're ready for your campaign or ready to start moving forward, we can provide you with that information so people are able to visually see it. Because it's tough. And, it's a big number, and they need to see where it's going.
I think breaking it down to what it looks like at each individual school versus a packet of, those facility needs packets were pretty good size, and there was a lot of information to take in, but really, what does it look like at each individual school? And that's where those posters really come in handy, because they can be, people can look at them on their own time when they're at the buildings. It can see the plan, see what the facade would look like, and then have kind of a bulleted list of, we're going to get a new cafeteria, a new gym, more classroom space, whatever each of those schools is getting will be listed there. And so that kind of stuff can come
When you're ready.
when you're ready for it.
Management of the project, is that factored into the?
In terms of like a construction manager, we have, Chuck and I talked about this because we thought it might come up at this meeting, and we feel comfortable that if this is not, if this is kind of the bond issue passes and follows generally this construction schedule, that we've got costs built in there to either have a district construction manager that is a district employee, owner's rep, or where you hire a contractor to manage manage the entire project. And that's a whole nother conversation about the different options for owner's rep versus construction manager at risk versus just a straight CM. And so,
that's, again, something we can help you guys work through.
Well, I just want to make sure that before you go forward with the number, that that's something that's factored in, so we're not scrambling at the end to try and figure out how we can either allocate resources internally to do that, or come up with additional money, or what we're going to cut to do it.
yeah, if we're looking at this schedule generally, that's factored in.
It's something we looked at.
Yeah.
I know we talked about new equipment, desks, things like that, but what about moving costs? I know there's going to be a lot of potential moving of these assets from this building to that building, and not the construction. Are those factored in anywhere?
We have, I know we have factored in a cost for new furniture and equipment into the new facilities. I don't know that we specifically had a line item for moving costs.
Typically we really don't. It's something,
But obviously, we need to look at, when it gets to that point, we need to make, and before we finalize what that number is, this bond issue starts with, we need to know that is accounted for either on your end or in the bond issue.
I just think it's something we need to account for, because it's embarrassing when you go to the end of it, you don't have enough money to finish because
You can't move, yeah.
you're absolutely right. Anything else before we hand it over to Dustin?
Just kind of what are your thoughts on the timing then? Is anybody thinking seriously about April?
No.
Okay. So we would, well, I'm sorry. But that's just something that we need to know on how soon we need to, there's a lot of things we can do. I went to O'Laughlin the other day, just with their site council, very informal, went through this. But I will have talked to Zach about putting together some of those bullet points, and that would go a long way to do. We're doing talking tours, and we're also going to do a walking tour. they go through the building with the principal and have their site council, teachers, whoever, and just say, these are some of the things involved, and it'll spark some interest, but it will kind of get the ball rolling a little bit, but I understand we don't want to hit everything, right now, and then say, oh, in September or whatever, we're going to have an election, but...
Well, and there's a possibility, Dean, when you're doing that, is to gauge people's interest of maybe serving on some of these committees.
Right.
Because that's going to be an important decision for you guys to kind of identify somebody to head up those committees, somebody to be on those committees, and so that's something that you can start now, too. Just to get those people kind of excited about it. And when it comes down to it, there's also the possibility of holding, some of those town hall meetings, one at each of the sites, so that they can see what you have now, because they may not know. They may know what, their child goes to this school, so I know all about this, or somebody who doesn't have kids in the district any longer to come back and see. There's many times when somebody says, well, that school was brand new when I went there. Okay, but that's been a long time ago. You need to come back and see where we're at and what we need for the future. And so it's a good opportunity to get people to those schools.
Well, and we can develop those kind of two-page fact sheets about what the news going to look like, but then also what are some of the deficiencies that may or may not be immediately evident when you walk in the building, but are as part of the plan. And we've got, through the visits with the administration at each of the buildings and the walking through the buildings, we've got that as of a couple of years ago, but then obviously there may be new issues that can be addressed, that can be brought up as part of these fact sheets. So those are good things to, again, when you're doing these walkthroughs, whether it be with parents or prospective students and parents, that say this is what we're proposing to fit. If this is what we're proposing to do at this building. Anything else for us?
We'll turn it over to Dustin, but we'll be right here if you need anything from us.
Good evening. Dustin A. with Piper Jaffray. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I know this is my first presentation in front of the board. The last 18 months I've shared some information with the Facility Needs Committee, and I think the purpose of tonight is really to evaluate and look at kind of an example plan of finance based upon the project that was presented by the Facility Needs Committee. So I have some packet information, and I think as we look through this, this analysis and this plan is based on a couple different things, a couple assumptions. Number one, we're really evaluating, looking at the November election of 15. Number one, we're basing the analysis upon the projected construction schedule provided by HTK. And then we're also looking at, obviously, what the mill-levy impact of the proposed project would be that was presented by the Facility Needs Committee. So keeping those things in mind, that was kind of the framework in terms of how we put together this analysis for the board's review. We're looking at a financing plan, or a plan of finance. So a couple different things go into that. One of them being interest rates. I think this is more as we talk to the public and as you look at kind of the mill-levy impact of a particular project. Obviously, we're still in a very favorable interest rate environment. You look back over the course of the last 25 plus years, rates have been higher than their current levels 95% of the time. Okay, so that's great news, right? Well, one of the concerns, obviously, and issues that we need to be aware of is we're still likely 6, 8, 9, 12 months away from an election, and so we want to be very cautious in terms of projections that we use at this time, but also as we get closer to the board taking official action to call a bond election. Obviously, we'd be revising figures up until that point to make sure that the numbers that we're providing and the mill-levy impact is reflective of current market interest rates or conservative current market interest rates at that particular time. But I think this is useful information as we get into sharing information with the public, obviously sharing with them that we're borrowing interest rates at very favorable levels. Obviously, that's part of the message as well. The next page, as you flip forward, assess valuation. And a couple of things on this page, obviously, mill levies a function of what you need to make payments on the bonds as compared to what your assessed valuation is. And so we obviously want to look at trends to make sure we're making conservative yet accurate assumptions going forward. And you're in a unique situation and position with respect to your assessed valuation growth over the last several years. And so because of kind of your unique position and the result of your valuation, a large portion of your valuation being attributed to oil and gas value, we want to make sure as we have these conversations about financing plans and mill levy analysis that we really have a good understanding of what those projections should be. Obviously, we're all very low of where oil is now compared to where it was 3 months ago. So we just want to be very cautious that we're not over-promising the public with respect to what the mill levy impact of the project will be. So assessed valuation is a big component of this plan of finance. Stated on bond issues, it's obviously 0%. You may be asked at a public meeting or by somebody in the public about, well, why does this school district get 50% of their bonds paid by the state of Kansas, and why don't we get 50% of our bonds paid by the state of Kansas? And it's really because of based upon the formula, the state of Kansas uses an assessed valuation per pupil matrix to really evaluate which districts get state aid and which do not. As a result of your assessed valuation per pupil, you're considered a very wealthy district on a per pupil basis, and so therefore you do not get any state aid on your bond issues. So obviously we can be prepared to answer those questions with respect to this district compared to other districts in the state of Kansas. The next page is really mill levy history, and I think this really goes back to the messaging with respect to the financing plan. And I look at this and you look at kind of where your overall district mill levy has been and where it is currently. I mean, it's 8 years ago it was at 53 mills. You're currently at 42 mills. I think there's a message there. We shared some information with the Facility Needs Committee that I think would be useful to the board in terms of sharing information with the public with respect to how does this district compare to other school districts in the same class. Obviously, there's been a lot of bond projects in the state of Kansas over the past 5 years. A lot of 4A and 5A school districts have done large bond issues, and I think it may be helpful for the community to see how you as a district compare to others in the state of Kansas. So really just more from messaging, we always want to look at mill levy history as well. So tab number 2 really gets into a lot of numbers. So I apologize for that, but the very first page is a summary. I want to go through the summary first and then go through a number of pages just to kind of give you really the details of the analysis. And so we looked at this particular project. It was $100 million, $40,000 would be the bond amount based upon what was proposed by the Facilities Committee. And obviously it's still subject to change and review and approval by the school board. But what we did is based upon the timing of that construction, so page 17 of that HTK packet, based upon the timing of when the district would need the funds, which is over a 3-year period, we devised a plan of finance to provide funding on an annual basis to be sufficient to meet the needs or the funding requirements for that particular year. So for example, we ran analysis for a 20-year bond issue, 25-year bond issues, and 30-year bond issues. Okay, and state statutes allow for school districts in Kansas to issue bonds for up to 30 installments over 32 years. Okay, so really kind of 30-year bond issues are the maximum length bond issue a district can finance a bond issue for. So we wanted to show really kind of what as this is with a mortgage, okay, the longer we finance a project, okay, the lower our owner payments are going to be, but obviously our interest cost is going to increase as well. So same type of concept for municipal bonds. By dividing, so in the first example, taking the construction schedule and dividing it out over a 3-year period. So you'd have one bond election, right? We only issue bonds as needed on an annual basis based upon the timing of construction. Each bond issue would be for a 20-year period. Okay, so we're over from the very first bond issue to when it's paid off is really a 22-year period, but each bond issue is over 20 years, staggered over 3 years. The estimated mill levy, projected mill levy would be 19.8 mills. Okay, that would be the mill levy impact, the projected mill levy impact to the patrons in the school district. Okay, that results, okay, so what's that mean to a homeowner in the district? And I have some more information about commercial and ag land we can review as well, but just from a comparison standpoint, the monthly cost to a homeowner with a $150,000 home will be $28.46 based upon a mill levy impact of 19.8 mils on that home. Okay? Same thing with the 25 years. So same construction schedule, rather than a 20-year financing over 3 years, it's 25 over 3 years. So first bond issue 25 years in 16, another bond issue in 17 for 25 years, and 18 for 25 years. Mill levy impact is 17.95 mils. So again, we're lower mill levy impact, which results in a $25.80 per month impact to a homeowner with a $150,000 home. Okay, and then the same thing with 30 years. So 3 bond issues over 3 years, each bond issue 30 years in length. That mill levy impact results in 17 mils, or $24.44 per month. Okay, so again, it kind of shows as we go longer, our mill levy becomes less, but then also you can see what the total estimated cost of principal and interest over the time period is. So for example, in the 20 years, total repayment, principal and interest over the 3 bond issues over 20 years each is $160 million. 25 years, $177 million, and over 30 years, $195 million. So you can see, again, kind of the examples of what each financing plan means in terms of total cost, but also mill levy impact to the patrons in the district. I think it's important. I know that we talk of mills from a budget perspective a lot, but what does 1 mill mean to this district? I think that's important that we can communicate that to the public as well. 1 mill, based upon the current valuations, is $311,000. So that's obviously we deal with that on a daily basis and during the budget process, but something that we want to make sure the public understands as well. So a couple details. And I'll talk through this a little bit here. The very first page is that 20-year scenario. And you can, so a couple different assumptions, and the assumptions at the very bottom of those pages. Okay, so because of the fluctuations in your assessed valuation, okay, oftentimes when school districts do bond issues, they typically tie the annual payment. So if the assessed valuation increases by a certain percentage, they also increase the annual payment by that percentage, so that the resulting mill levy is the exact same every year. Okay. The one thing I did a little bit differently for this district, given some of the volatility or the large increases in your valuation and the concern or the issue that, well, at some point do those valuations reverse course and they fall, rather than focusing on making the annual bond payment go at the same rate as your assessed valuation, I assumed that I made this assumption that we'd have a level bond payment each and every year. Okay, so for example, if you look at that total debt service column, which is in the middle of that page, you can see it's right around $7.6 million would be your annual debt service requirement over 20 years. Okay, so each bond issue over 20 years. Okay. And then you can see also that the 2016, okay, based upon the timing of construction, there would be a bond issuance. I don't want to make any confusion. There's one bond election, right, and then there's a bond issuance. Okay, so you'd be authorized to issue bonds in an amount not to exceed what was approved by voters. Once that's approved, then you can issue bonds in any increment over any period of time. Okay, once it's authorized. So in 2016, based upon the time of construction, the projected bond amount would be $30 million in 2016. That would provide enough funding for bond projects that were to be completed in 2016, in the beginning of 2017. In 2017, there will be a bond issuance of about $50 million over 20 years. Okay? And in 2018, there'll be a bond issuance about over $20 million for 20 years. Okay? And you can see at the very, very bottom, I have those scenarios highlighted and the projected interest rate of each bond issue. So those rates look low, right? And they are. If we were actually in the market today with a bond issue, for a 20-year bond issue, we'd be closer to 3.25% right now. Okay, so around 50 to 75 basis points higher for 2016, We're probably close to 1% higher for, compared to what we're projecting for 2017, and we're probably 1.5% higher in our projections from where we are now in 2018. So that being said, a lot can happen in the next 6, 9, 12 months, and so as those things happen, we'll be revising these numbers accordingly to make sure that we're being conservative in the projections. Okay. So on the very right, okay, so after all that's said and done, we're trying to structure bond payments so our payments are equal every year. So regardless of what happens to the assessed valuation, we know that our payments are going to be X amount, and if our assessed valuation grows at 5%, we know that less mills will be required to make that bond payment. Okay, but on the opposite though too is if our bond payment's fixed, and all of a sudden our assessed valuation drops back down to $275 million, we know that the mill levy requirement would need to be more based upon a drop in assessed valuation. Okay. So you can see the 19.8 mils on the right-hand side. Okay, you can see how that stays the same. We're showing that staying the same over 22 years in total. Okay. There's a column on the right, the second column from the right is called fund balance. Okay. In a school district's budget, there's a line item, it's line number 120, which is what's called cash basis reserve. It's one of the most, in addition to the contingency reserve that a school district has, the fund balance or the cash basis reserve in the bond interest fund is one of the only other tools a school district can use to manage not only the bond and interest mill levy, but also the overall mill levy of a school district. And so you can see that this fund balance is created through saleable bonds. We deposit funds through sale bonds. When you sell bonds, oftentimes there's excess premium. Investors buy bonds at a premium. They pay the school district premium for those bonds. The district can use the premium for either projects or deposit it into the bond and interest fund. Okay, we're showing that premium that's being paid by investors for the bonds going into that bond and interest fund to be used as a fund balance. That fund balance then is used to help maintain and stabilize that mill levy at 19.8 mils. Okay. Now in our example, we're also showing that our assessed valuation is increasing at 1.5% beginning in 2020. So it remains flat through 2019. It grows at 1.5% beginning in 2020. As that valuation increases, obviously, I'm showing the mill levy remaining where it is and what the impact of that is. So you can see that our fund balance gets fairly large. So in 2033, for example, our fund balance is $2.8 million. Okay, but it's not really. I want you to see what the impact of keeping your mill levy the same. But the reality is when it gets to a point where you have enough in your fund balance that you feel comfortable with being able to manage your overall mill levy, you can start dropping your mills. So as an example, I don't have this in your packet, but you'd be able to drop your mill levy in 2032 from 19.8 to 17.9 mils. Okay, so the intent of that is to keep our bond payments the same as our assessed valuation grows. Now use a school district to lower your mill levy lower than what you had told the voters. Questions on that? So then on the next page is all the assumptions stay the same, okay, except for it's 3 25-year bond issues, okay? And so again, you can see the resulting mill levy on the right-hand side at 17.95 mils, okay? Now you can see your fund balance, right? Your fund balance, because your assessed valuation is growing, but we're keeping our bond payment the same, we're able to reduce our mill levy at some point down the road, assuming that this happens, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Breakout between the 30 million in 2016 versus the 50 and 17, and dropping down to 20 was based on the construction.
It was, yes.
Okay.
So can that change? Okay, the answer is yes. So this is hypothetically, let's say that you had a successful bond project last April, okay? And all of a sudden we have these projections in there, and we were looking at the same exact construction schedule, and we were at rates where we are today. We may be in a position to where we would revise the plan of finance and lock in lower interest rates than what was projected, which obviously results in a lower mill levy impact. So this is, the timing of when the bonds are issued can be fluid. There's nothing that says has to be done this way. There may be delay in construction, and we want to delay it another year. Interest rate may be better than what's projected, and we want to accelerate and issue more bonds up front, and it can still fit in the analysis. So once the election has been passed, what's for certain is we've communicated to the voters the mill levy impact. Right? I mean, we've said it's 20 mills, or it's been 19 mills, or 17 mills. That's the most important number. And so whatever happens after that, we're always targeting to making sure we can deliver to the public what the Board of Education told the public it would be. Whether that's the 30, 50, 20, or it could be a 50, 50. I mean, you could devise it different ways. The ultimate goal is to make sure that the mill levy that was communicated to the public is what can be delivered to the public. Does that help?
It does.
Okay. Good question.
So that gives us flexibility.
It does, yeah. So it's absolutely. I mean, I think about this process, and it's where we're developing this plan. We've assumed a March issuance in 2016. Well, you might until June of 16. Okay, so after the election, we're really reevaluating everything in terms of, okay, where are we at in terms of the market? Okay, what's the time, has the construction schedule changed at all? And based upon those things, then we're reevaluating, okay, is this plan of finance still appropriate, or can we lock in more bonds now to avoid any interest rate risk? There's a lot of flexibility in that process, knowing that the ultimate objective is still to meet the mill levy impact, mill levy target.
You're talking about, though, needing to drop that number,
Yes,
like we're here.
right.
Is that something we can communicate, or that's something we can't count on, so you can communicate?
I think it's hard. I mean, I think the objective is that, I think the board's taking steps so that if valuation does grow in the future, there's an ability to reevaluate the bond interest budget on an annual basis and reduce the mill levy accordingly. Okay.
Or we reach
20, 25, whatever year, but I also think it's important you're a big district, there's going to be capital needs down the road too. And so when you look at, we're looking at a financing plan now, but we're also thinking about this on a long-term basis. And I guess in 15, 20, 25 years, there's probably other needs the school district has. And so as you look at this and as your mill levy begins to drop, you're probably going to be in a position that there's going to be another round of capital needs. And so the idea is that as bonds fall off and the mill levy lowers, you're able to layer on future bond projects in 15, 20, 25 years without dropping that mill levy off completely. So there's a bigger picture concept here. I'd say we're a long ways away from that, but but on the flip side, I think we're also being cautious with respect to what happens if it goes down. We're at an all-time high in terms of what your assessed valuation is. Come next July, when that new number comes out, it could be lower. That's certainly a possibility, and so it's just, sometimes it helps knowing if our payment, what we don't want to have happen is if our payment's growing, right, and all of a sudden our assessed valuation drops, that mill levy impact to catch up is a lot bigger. That's what we want to try to avoid. But going back to your question about mill levy drops, so in that 25-year scenario, you'd be dropping your mill levy in 2031 to 16.25 mils, and then another 14.75 in 2038. So that, again, that's projections a long ways out, but the idea there is at some point that mill levy could drop based upon the amount of cash that fund balance or assessed valuation that was in place at that time. And then lastly, again on the 30-year scenario, you're really at 17 mils would be the initial mill levy impact, and again you could drop your mill levy, by the end at 30 years maybe down to 12.5 mils over time. on the flip side, and I should mention this too, so you say, well, do we have to drop a mill levy? The answer is no. I mean, you can still keep the same mill levy and just prepay your bonds early too. And that's always an option as well. So all bond issues have prepayment or call dates, and so as you're maintaining your same levy and your assessed valuation is growing, you're collecting more taxes, those taxes can be used to prepay your bonds earlier than planned. Taxpayer cost analysis. So number 3, we went through, I won't go through all these numbers, but just a couple notes. So we provided we talked about the impact to a homeowner with a $150,000 home. On that first page, you'll see a number of different home values and what each financing term means in terms of mill levy impact and cost to a homeowner. Okay, we also provide the same information for a commercial property owner. And then the last page of that section relates to an agricultural landowner. And obviously there's a lot of ag land in the district. Every parcel of ag land has a different use values, and market values based on use value. We've just taken the Department of Revenue publishes on its website the median use value for various soil types. And just for illustration purposes, we've taken the median of all those soil types to give us an idea of what a quarter section of irrigated land or grassland or dry cropland would be. Again, we're not specific to any property because they're all different. And then lastly, the very last tab is just talking about calendar and process, and obviously going back to the very first conversation this evening about just timing, thinking about just November from a legal process. And I know Zach had a slide up on this. So thinking about November of 15, the board's really having to take official action by a meeting in August. That'd be, and so you think about, okay, what board requirements? It's project, it's bond amount, it's date of election, it's type of election. Those are really kind of, in my mind, kind of the 4 main requirements that you as a board need to decide upon before August 10th, assuming a November election. So you can see it's always 3 months. So if for April elections it's January, March elections, or for June elections it's March, and so forth. Thank you for staying awake.
Richard. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So do we have discussion at this time about a couple of those decisions? So apparently I stand alone, even though I guess the first question is decided. However, if we're doing a mail-in election, then that November is flexible, right?
Right.
Is that just kind of a target date for us?
Yeah, it could be a month or 2 earlier. I think you'd want to get school started, but, yeah.
So we chose to do a mail-in ballot for the LP. What about this walk-in? I remember it says we're talking about walk-in.
Well, walking, I think we can pull out.
So that would actually,
You still have to pay all the poll workers. I mean, every site is open and those things. And I don't remember all the details of it, but that's something that Sarah and I can find out and bring that back next time.
I would offer one word of advice, I'm trying to put that there, I wasn't, but one word of advice on that. Sometimes for a mail-in ballot, you're going to get a better turnout for that same reason we spoke about earlier, about being working late, and we can get out that kind of thing. And generally, a bigger turnout is more successful for a district. Your no voters, they're going to vote if it's a blizzard out or what, they're going to vote. It's a lot of the yes voters who are in support are happy to support, but don't always get out and vote, they assume it's going to pass. So it's just something to think about when you look at those 2 options.
can you actually put on the ballot, on number, maybe it was, on number
get a ballot unless you're registered. Right.
So ballots only mailed to those that are registered.
Yeah. But the committee could get a list of all the registered voters and do legwork to help facilitate that.
That's part of that, kind of get out the vote in order, using the voter registration files to really identify if you know there's new people in the community that you're going to have that are in the district, but maybe they aren't registered to vote yet just because they're new to the community. Targeted finding those individuals and making sure that, or even recent graduates that have, or students that have turned 18 in high school that haven't registered to vote yet, to do those voter registration drives. Those are.
And this is really easy to, if you have you have an information table at a sporting event or a parade or whatever it is, you can have voter registration forms there for people to take and fill out. Just, are you registered to vote? Some may not even be sure. Take one, fill it out just in case, or if you're not, here's how you do it. So it's really a good time to also kind of facilitate that effort to get people registered. And it's something good for even for students. You've got a bunch of seniors that absolutely, and it's a good lesson. I mean, it's something to talk about in your government class, and get them excited about voting because it's something for their district.
And they don't have fun.
And they're not, I think they say that out loud, but they're not made. Yep. Because the kids that have gone to college, get them the provisional ballots, or the voter ballots, and they're going to go for it.
So what type of decisions need to be made right now? If we're looking, I think, the unofficial poll here is probably closer to November. What type of decisions need to be made here pretty quick to get that ball going?
I think that you can start to kind of identify people who might be involved in this campaign. Certainly we want to, solidify the date, again, whether it's November or, even a little bit before that, that's up to you guys. Talk about the mail-in or walk-in election.
And we can get more information from the county clerk. I called him last week, and I felt bad calling him last week, 2 weeks before a big election. So I anticipate that a week or so after the election that there'll be, she said send her an email, and the county clerk send her an email, and that we've got some questions into her about the cost. So I anticipate within the next week or so, maybe, or shortly after the election, that she may get back to me on terms of what the cost would be for both a mail-in ballot or a walk-in ballot, or walk-in voting.
And if you guys are considering a survey, and again, that's completely up to you guys. It's just something that we've seen done in a lot of districts, but that doesn't mean it's right for you.
What's the timeline on that? When does that usually go out again?
The survey generally takes about 6 weeks to do. They would target about 400, a sample of 400, and the Patron Insight that we've worked with, generally it's a telephone survey, but they target till they get that 400. They don't just call 400 people and say, oh, we only had 100 people respond. They continue to call till they get that sample number.
What point in time does that survey get done? Because there's got to be some education that goes beforehand.
I would say you want to get through the holidays because people are busy and they don't want a phone call. But I think towards the first of the year, even into February, once people kind of get settled into the year, then they could start their survey, and that still gives them time to do the survey, and then you time to react to the survey.
And by react, I understand that you want to check the pulse of the community, but this is a battle here. You want to expect, you want to promote, you want to do everything that you can. So does the survey, do you spend $16,000 to tailor your program afterwards differently? Because you kind of know what the pulse is. Whether it's 50-50, whether it's 30-70, that doesn't really matter. You're still providing the information unless you're just going to pull out. So is that what you use a survey for, that you're not going to go through with it anymore? I don't understand the necessity on that. It seems like a lot of money. Oh, hold on. It just seems like a lot of money for What? What do you do with the results of the survey?
If you find out that there's some certain aspect that is overwhelming that people have issue with, or overwhelming that they're excited about, it kind of allows you to maybe step back and look, okay, maybe this aspect isn't what they're going to support, and so how do we modify that to make the entire issue successful? Because you don't want the entire bond issue to fail because somebody was unhappy about an extra gym on one school. Or something, I mean, it varies, but you'd be surprised at what people kind of pick up on, and then that's, they may vote no for an entire issue because they didn't like a small project within it. So maybe it will help them.
So my concern is the facility needs committee has spent this 2 years and is giving us supposedly what is desperately needed, not what is just wished for, but what is needed. And has done a lot of that polling in each of the schools to get to that point. And are we somewhat past that? I mean, I know we don't have the public perception of it, but it almost seems like the survey is for us to start coming back and chopping it apart.
Sure.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing, this is what we need.
And you really don't have any real big hot button issues in terms of, I mean, sometimes excessive or big sports complexes or certain pieces of bond issues that are, that some people can see as excessive and some people as not, can become hot button issues and can kill a bond issue pretty quickly. But really, I mean, through the process and through the Facility Needs Committee, they've really vetted a lot of that within the district, and it's kind of proven and has shown that we've got, I mean, we're sharing, we've got a number of schools that share a gym and a cafeteria, and I mean, the simple fact of how many students they have to get through lunchtime, they're not able to have the amount of PE classes that they need, or lunch is having to start at 10 o'clock in the morning to get through by 1 o'clock. So you've really got, and some districts, I mean, we've seen it successfully done in districts where it's the whole push is a needs-based push, and said these are our needs that we have, immediate needs that we have, and that alone is enough to convince people why they should vote for it. There's not a big vote yes campaign out there. It's really, these are the needs we're honest about. We've gone through the process for a couple of years and have evaluated things that we may want, but we really got down to focused on this is what we really need to meet the current needs of in the buildings, but then also project out to looking at what district growth might be. So
You know your district, and that's where, we're not going to tell you how to do it needs to be done this way, this way, this way. You know your district, you know how quickly, you know what's been done, and so certainly we want to look to you to provide, that information, what you think is right, and it may absolutely not be right for you guys. And it's just something that we wanted to throw out there as an option and a way to kind of start that process.
I mean, surveys are good. I mean, surveys are kind of, I mean, they tell you, sometimes they tell you what you already know, too, and that you can say we paid X amount of dollars, we already knew that. And so that's always the kind of the two sides of the coin to it. That, I mean, because you don't have any real hot button issues that I would consider, and you guys, I mean, you might vet amongst people that you know, I mean, just vet amongst kind of your circle of friends and say, I mean, is there anything in here that stands out as something that seems excessive or seems that we don't need at this point, just as kind of an informal. And I think a lot of that happened through the Facility Needs Committee process too, is, I mean, that just from that time frame that they were involved with that I think there was, and I mean, we had probably 8 different options at one point, everything from just fixing what's broken at the schools to building brand new schools, closing down a number of schools. So we've really looked at, the committee really looked at what are all those options. I mean, we, and folk drilled in on and vetted that back through some community forums, through the facility needs process. So, I mean, I think the survey, I mean, I don't know that the survey is imperative, what you guys do it, but, I mean, it,
Just an option.
yeah, so.
We brought ourselves back into the meeting, so we can
And like I said earlier, we're happy that if you have more questions, to probably get them to Dean, and then he can forward them on to us.
Can you get us like the bullet list of what we would do to the buildings?
From like the,
Something a little easier to see.
yeah, no, I think that would make a difference.
And Elizabeth, I think if you and I could come up with a timeline, and then bring that back to the board and give them an idea of what we're looking at and when things would take place, it might be beneficial too.
And that's the thing, is I've talked to you guys for 2 hours about this, but you don't want to right now. So, we have a lot more information to share, and I'm going to do that through superintendent.
And I think we can also touch on, Greg, touch on your comment earlier about construction manager. That's another, whole nother conversation, but I think is an important one to have, to know kind of what structure of overall project manager from a construction standpoint you guys are leaning towards, and we're again happy to provide more information, whether it's just in a board meeting setting or just phone conversation or however. So, thank you.
I think from a board perspective, one of the things we need to look at is not so much when do we get to go forward, but should we go forward? Are we prepared to go forward? We're talking about a 25% increase in square footage approximately. How do we allocate our capital outlay resources over the 20 years of that bond to make sure we don't end up in the same position we are now? And how do we make sure that happens? And I think kind of that was part of what Josh was hitting on. I don't know if that's where he was going, but I think you got to be able to establish that we've budgeted appropriately, that we don't run into issues that we haven't appropriately budgeted. And I think we're heading in that direction, but I think you've got to be able to put it black and white and show everybody that here's where we end up over the next 20 years on our transportation, our technology, our building and grounds budgets, and so we don't end up in the same boat here. Right.
Well, but I think part of that is also looking at showing and communicating that we can't fix these mechanical issues with the money that we currently have or projected to have.
Right. What would we do
So
on the
that's
next?
kind of showing both sides of that.
If you don't have a bond over the next 20 years, where would you be taking what you have and fixing what's wrong? So I think you've got to be able to lay that out there because you're going to get hit with that question.
Well, I think we have, sorry to keep butting in, but we've looked at kind of separated the costs of, I believe we have kind of what are your kind of infrastructure improvements that need to happen today or that have been identified need to happen today at each of the buildings. Yeah, mechanical systems, plumbing systems, piping, steel piping that's completely corroded that needs to be replaced, mechanical systems that, large mechanical systems that are either outdated or needing to be replaced and either are outdated enough that parts aren't available anymore, you're having to buy them kind of third-party parts for just equipment that's old enough that it's reached its kind of effective life without putting more effort into it.
And that will help you guys operate more efficiently too, which will help with kind of that capital outlay and what you're paying. Once you have new systems in, your bills are going to go down because what you have is, not operating at high function as it should be, so it's going to cost you a little more. So that will help too.
Those numbers I think you need to have so you can show these efficiencies, give us the ability to do other things as well. So,
And we can work with you on some of that, on how the efficiency will improve.
Yeah, to some extent, you are building more square footage, but you are, with your systems that you're putting in, will be greatly more efficient than what's currently there. So it's a little hard to, I mean, if you were sticking with your current size of facility and said that this is what our operating costs are now, and this is what replacement of these systems, through some engineering calculations, can come up with what the future operating costs are. But when you start adding new square footage onto that, it makes it a little more difficult to compare it strictly apples to apples.
But those numbers do exist, right?
They could be, in terms of what the operating costs for.
Well, so let's take, for example, lighting. I think this is where you're, if we add so many square foot of new lighting, you put in LED light bulbs that last 25 years, you don't do any maintenance on lighting. Or currently you have this square footage, you're doing X number of dollars every year on this square foot. So do those numbers exist to calculate?
I think they could, I don't know that, they don't currently exist on paper, but I think Haas and Brown engineers had initially done a lot of looked at the engineering, and I think with the right questions to them, I think I could probably come up with some, I mean, they're not a generalized calculation, but they could say that if you switch to all LED, this would be the improved efficiency and costs and paybacks on those systems.
I understand the generalization, but if we look at it from a vacuum, you're spending X amount on energy for this square footage at a certain efficiency. You're adding on X amount of square footage at a certain efficiency. Realistically, you should be able to show.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, I'm saying we don't have that right. We don't have that information right now, but I think we should be able to get that.
And that's just one piece of the equation. And the other part is over your first 5 years, if you replaced all the carpet, you're going to have you shouldn't have any additional carpeting expense. But then as that carpet wears out, then what is the, you still have 25% more carpet to replace because you enlarged it, and so you're not going to have, or maybe you will have additional money coming in, but how do you continue to replace the carpet with that, or whatever else, the tile, whatever building maintenance and improvement issues there are. I mean, I know there's ways to calculate that, but we just need to have done our homework on that and have an answer to that question.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll move on to item 6, communications from other organizations.
We have 2 reports that are attached. That's the Rec Commission board meeting agenda and minutes, and then also the early childhood communications report.
Thank you.
We got any questions on those two? All right, item 7, report of superintendent.
The only thing I have is to talk just a minute about the KASB annual convention is December 5th, 6th, and 7th in Overland Park. Is anyone interested in going to that?
I went last year.
If you are, I mean, we just need to appoint a delegate. If you want to vote in the delegate assembly on the issues, but then we need to make reservations and do all those things if so.
5th, 6th, and 7th. December 5th, 6th, and 7th?
Yes.
What is it?
Really, Friday is the pre-conference type things, but the 6th and 7th are the main. Superintendents have a lot of things on the 5th, but if you're interested, I don't think I'll be going, but if anybody is interested, then we'll get the information, and you really just need to let us know, so you get your name on the list, so you're staying in that location, so.
It's in Kansas City this year.
Yes, Overland Park.
Tina, I've got the paperwork if anybody wants it tonight.
So, just, yeah.
Answer you, Bruce.
We have to appoint somebody now?
No, we'll get that information to appoint somebody as a delegate, but let Sarah know if anybody is interested, and we'll get the ball rolling there and appoint a delegate, and get you more information, so.
Okay, thanks, Steve. All right, on to item 8, financial support or reports from Executive Director of Finance. We could use some financial support, too.
Yeah.
Our September report is attached. We have spent 16.22% this year so far. We are under where we should be. I don't see any concerns or anything at this time. Of course, looking at every line item to see if we ever, are getting close or have any concerns there, but I don't have any concerns at this point. We will be talking about the enrollment numbers here in a little bit, but I think we've got some efficiencies and some other areas that we've been saving some money on that will hopefully be able to make up for the enrollment. The athletic costs are also attached. The district last year, looking at 2013-14, spent $563,000 on coaches, officials, transportation, and supplies. It was asked last week what percentage of the general fund that was, but really in 2014, general fund and supplemental general were both used, funds were both used for athletics. It was 2.5% of general and supplemental general that were spent on athletics from the district side. Below that shows what was received into Hayes High and Hayes Middle School from our community and parents through donations, fundraisers, and gate receipts, which totaled $404,000 between the two schools, $321,000 at Hayes High and $82,500 at Hayes Middle School. And then also I attached the most recent capital outlay spreadsheet. The numbers that you have seen continuously for fiscal year 15. In the second column, I put what we've spent through September 30th so far. I know there's some question of, have we purchased something yet? And so I went ahead and added those numbers. And then it did extend it out 5 more years. So you can kind of use that as we're talking about, the solar panels or technology or whatever is coming up. So you kind of have an idea of what we have budgeted thus far for those years and kind of the direction that we're seeing those going.
Tracy, do we know how much we spend on leases every year? The interest and all that?
I could get it for you.
Okay.
I don't have that readily available, but I can get it.
Basis of what?
Well, how we have, if you look down expenses, leases in progress, we've got 10 or 12 items there that are on leases.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of school districts go to cash, try to pay, bill them in. Years down the road where you offset the expenses to reduce your interest payments. And so if we're paying an absurd amount of interest every year, we need
You
to
guys
look.
putting interest?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
missed that piece. I'm like, oh, it's right here? Okay. Sorry.
Our interest rates, at least on the large purchases, are pretty low.
Yeah.
Less than 3%. One thing, as you look at those numbers, especially when you look at the Hayes Middle School additions, one thing to consider on those would be to roll those into a bond issue and have those paid out, which is where they probably should have started, but that does free up cash to do other things as well. Because those are 10-year leases.
Yeah, that's something to look at. AstroTurf is paid off this year. There's several things are. The 84 passenger bus.
So like on that first copier lease, 5 to 5, are we going to need to make a decision?
Yes, it comes due in December, and so we'll look at another lease on that.
And I think that's the big machine down here, isn't it?
Right, it's one of the 2 in the copy center.
That's very, very cheap to run. So, yeah.
What was your question, Sarah? I'm sorry.
Well, so we're going to need to start talking about that fairly quickly, right?
We already are. Yeah, it's 11,000, so it's under. Right, but yeah.
Is looking at lease versus purchase, or do you not do that with contracts?
I believe they've talked about it in the past. We have not brought that conversation up recently. It's been my understanding with copiers, and I'm not an expert on them in any sort of way, but there's a lot of upkeep if you own them to maintain them. So, but we should talk about it.
Includes all maintenance on it?
Yes. Yeah, we're not charged per copy or anything on those two large machines down here. So that's why we highly encourage the schools and everybody to use these, because there isn't a cost per copy for that.
I think the bigger issue on those copiers is not the lease versus owning, but if we're going to have a copy center, do we make everything be copied here, or do we have everybody have their own copier in their buildings? And that's been the debate, or had been. I think it went one way and it went back the other. So I'm not.
We have a great deal, and we really made a push last year and this year about sending everything here, and they are very busy. I don't know the number of copies, but it's amazing how much they do here.
Well, and I'm not saying that we should, but I just think, if you're going to, do you need, multiple copiers in other buildings, or do you?
Some, we're having that discussion through technology about the number of printers, I think is where we need to start. If we have a copier, in the building, why do we have a printer in every room? And I'm exaggerating, but we're having those conversations to see what direction we really need to go, because it's, obviously the printer is the most expensive way to print, and then building copier is a little different. But we can scan, we actually do that with all the purchasing now. I mean, send all that stuff out.
Function anymore, where if it's a copier, it can do the printing and everything else as well.
Yeah, so, but yeah, we're having those conversations.
Okay. Was there anything else on that, Tracy?
That's all I have, unless there's other questions.
Okay, thank you. Up next, item 9, we have the consent agenda, which includes the board meeting minutes from October 6, 2014, the board work session minutes from October 20, 2014, financial reports, including the clerk's report, investment report, petty cash report, personnel transactions, surplus TV, in which the board approves recycling of antiquated equipment, and the approval of bills in the amount of $2,647,767.87. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. Okay. Moved by Board Member Patterson, seconded by Board Member Schwartz. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Seconded by Ray. Oh, I didn't hear it. All right, on to new business, enrollment data. Dean and Tracy?
This is based on our SO66. It is not audited numbers yet, but I'll just give you the kind of the highlights here. When you look at head count compared to last year, we're actually 57 students more than last year. That includes pre-kindergarten through the Learning Center. And when you put the FTE, full-time equivalent to that, kindergarten is 0.5, 4-year-old at risk, a lot of those younger students are 0.5 funded, so you only get half. And then in the Learning Center, they're based on how many hours and things they spend. We're still 33 more, we have 33 more FTE just on those than what we had last year. But when you look at the weighted FTE, which includes everything, we're actually 43 less than what we had last year. And 32 of that comes from new facilities weighting, when the legislators passed the bill and changed the language and some of those things. That was one of the things we really fought to try to get them to change the wording back to where we would qualify with the middle school to get new facilities weighting. So we lost 32 FTE because of that, or in that neighborhood. We didn't go ahead and figure how many students are in there, but the classrooms are full all the time, and that's an estimate. But then we also lost the non-proficient at risk, which was another 7. They changed how you count virtual weighting factors, those things and that. So they changed a lot of things, but overall we lost 39 FTE just on those 2 things. So we feel pretty good about where we are. I think If you look at this sheet, compared to what we budgeted in general fund, the working budget were $14,442 less than what we had projected, which isn't a big amount, very manageable. When you look at the local option budget, though, and that was another thing they changed, added more funding or more state aid, but changed what you can count for that. You can't count the virtual students and some of these other things now. So we've dropped 61,968 there. So as Tracy had mentioned a little bit earlier, that as far as where we're going to make that up, there's places, one is workers' comp. When we made that change, we still budgeted for what we had originally planned, and I don't know what the savings was, 60,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. So there's things like that that happen or will occur that will make that up. So overall, not discouraged with the total head count numbers, discouraged with the formula and what we ended up with the full-time equivalent students for funding. So,
Dean, I'm looking at these numbers here. Grade 2, grade 1, kindergarten, you've got 254, 267, 269.
those.
What happens if we get 270 in that entire, those three grade levels together go to middle school? Isn't the capacity of the middle school 750?
Well, with the new class, it's probably higher. These numbers on this sheet include all of the private school students that we service through special ed or homeschool students or anybody that, even if it's a portion, this comes off that SO66. So this is what we say our head count is, but all of these students aren't in our school every day, and it's yes, I do, I think, have the numbers, and I thought I did, but I must, no, they're back here. We have, the latest numbers that I have, we have 270 kindergarten students, 259 first graders, 243 second graders, 219 third graders, and I'll send this out. The latest numbers that we have kids moving in now, a few leaving, but not many. But so those aren't kids that are sitting in our classrooms on this sheet. That's what we have on the SO66 that we get funded for. These other numbers are actual students that are there every day. But we'll get this one out then.
Anybody got any other questions?
65,000 is better than
On to
1.2 million.
the school day hour comparison of top 5A, 4A schools. Dean, I'll let you take that one over.
We did, and you want to pull up the graphs, put this on graphs, and I'm just going to go through in the order here, and it has the all of these are just based on high school, because we didn't want to have the same thing for high school than middle school than elementary. And the high school numbers are a little bit different, but we did put where we are in the rest. So looking at high school teacher plan time, high school is 90 minutes with the block schedule. Elementary is 60, and actually the middle school, I believe, when you look at their time, not including team time, is 42 minutes. The range is 100 minutes to 30. It has 0, but if they just didn't report, I don't know of any school that doesn't have plan time. And the low was 30. Most of the elementary schools had in the 60-minute range, somewhere in there. Some schools have less plan time, and I think those are the ones that have a longer contact day for students and some of those things that help go less days. But the next graph is high school student hours per day, and if you look at this, actually our high school students go a little bit longer than elementary and middle school because of the activities that they have, and then there's a couple days that they don't attend when they have, I believe, the tip-off tournament and maybe wrestling. I don't know if it's both of them or not, but the high school has 6.7 day, elementary, our elementary 6.5, middle school 6.5. The lowest is, and you can see at the top, Leavenworth, Kansas City, those schools have a 6.5 days. So we are the lowest in the middle and elementary school for student hours per day. The next one is high school teacher contract day, which is the same for every teacher. Again, we just put high school on this because that's what we compared everything to. High school, all of our schools have 179 teacher days. The high is 190 days, that's Goddard. The low is Hayes with 179. You can see most of them are in the 160 or 186 range, somewhere in that ballpark. So we are really pretty low there. And then you combine that with the length of the student day, it makes a difference there. Then contract hours, these are all the same. High school, middle school, elementary, 7.25 hours a day is what they are contracted to work. Again, that is the lowest out of all of these are 4 and 5A schools that reported. 7.25 hours, the high was 8.2. The average was 7.72. So again, one of the lowest on number of hours that required to work. I think there's one more right there. Student contact days, we are at 170 days, what we have for contact days for students. The high out of these schools was 177, the low was 165. These do include like parent-teacher conference days, those things are included in there. So we're not in the middle on the number of student days. Again, these numbers, it just depends on how some of them are reported. I think we got it as accurate as we could for now, but we'll use this as we go through with the calendar committee. And my whole goal is to look at some way that we can have more collaboration time and with teachers and do all the things. If we're looking at new technology, all of those things, we need to have more time that they can work together. Obviously, we don't want to cut any more days or cut the length of the day. Any of those options are out. I think we need to look at the other way and how we can create some more time. So that's one reason that we're having the calendar committee get together, and this is the start of that information. So
There's a lot of information right there. Now, when you look at those individually, you can't make any sense of them. Is there any matrix or statistician or some kind of multivariate formula that can be put in and say, where we rank based on test scores or student performance? Are we at the top? Are we at the top? Are we at the bottom? Because I'm looking at this, we've got the lowest contract days per year. We've got the lowest contract hours per day out of anybody. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
well, I can't say either way. I mean, I think traditionally Hayes' test scores are very good, but I think we're going to head the other direction with all of the new things. And at the work session, when the state board member was here talking about gearing up for college and career ready and all those things. We haven't done our due diligence with staff to train and do all of those things with them that we need to do. Same way technology, we have to provide some more time to do staff development and those things. So I really think we're going to see the trend fall the other way. Now, test scores are really touchy with the state assessments they've been, but yeah, we can do some comparisons with the report card. They compare to like school districts, so we can get that information and do that, sure.
But as she said, Sally, it said other schools have time for professional development. Is that why they have time for professional development?
Well, that's part of it. There's all kinds of things you can do, but that is part of it. I mean, you just have to have enough days. You have to have a minimum of 1,116 hours of student contact time. And when we do the calendar, and this is in the agreement, we shoot for the very minimum. We shoot for 1,116, and that's it. And again, I'm not going to tell you anything different. I still can't understand the negotiated agreement, how we get somewhere listed that we have 165 student days. But when you count them, it's actually the 170. But it just, to me, it doesn't make sense that we shoot for the bare minimum contact time. I've never been in a district that's done that, but that's the way the agreement is, and that's what we've done. I think we need to look at that. And a lot of it is, even professional development counts towards these minutes, half of those towards that time. So,
For student contact time?
yes.
Any professional development?
Any professional development counts as half. So if you have professional development for, make it simple, 8 hours for that, you would mark down as student contact time. Parent-teacher conferences count as a day of student contact time. So I need to figure out the negotiated agreement and those things, but that's why I think it's so important to get the committee together, just so we have a good understanding, and I don't know why we shoot for the bare minimum on that, and we need to look at those things. So,
Yeah, and I don't want to just focus on the numbers. I think we need to understand, what's the goal? We need more collaboration time.
Exactly.
We talk about technology, or talk about, whatever the issue is. And to do that, we need to be negotiating this piece of it, and here's where we compare to other districts. So you can see we're not completely out of line and asking for this.
yeah.
But people need to understand why it's important, why we need that change. It's not just numbers to change numbers.
I went back, we talked about testing data, and I went back to the 2003 and 4 school year and looked at all the testing data between, for reading grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 11, math the same, and science for 4, 7, and 10. Just figured out where we ranked statewide, percentage-wise. And the best percentage we got over that, and I didn't take, each grade might be a little different each year. I think we were in the top 7%, it looks like maybe it was the best we did at any one grade level or over that time period. If you averaged out, reading over all grades, the best we were at was 17.5%. Math, looks like it was about 20%. But if you average all those years together, we scored about the 26.34%. So, which is good, but it's top 25%. I think we're in a lot of different areas in one of those other, as far as we score a lot higher in pay and benefits, shorter work days and those things. Be happy to share those with anybody if you want.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, we'll move on to item C, purchase procedures.
Do you have, Cheryl is here if you have questions, I guess, but this is the procedures we started using. I think they work very well. But you might just come up, Cheryl. And
I don't know if any of you have any specific questions. I asked at the work session, and I kind of hit the high spots at the work session last month. Basically, we want to update our procedure manuals to match what we've implemented at the board office as part of our restructuring and efficiency changes. The Cliff Note version is purchasing is primarily electronic. We are asking the buildings to place their orders versus us sifting through them, whether we order this or you ordering this, because sometimes they wanted us to order, sometimes they were ordering, and we had an individual go purchase order by purchase order. So the vast majority of the orders will be placed at the buildings. Everything is done electronic, including sending the POs to the buildings. They receive the purchase orders faster. Is there any questions?
It's currently in place, working well.
Yes, it's been implemented. We kind of got between a rock and a hard place with, for lack of better terms, with the changes, and the schools are very happy with how quick they're getting them. The secretaries had to make some adjustments with the ordering, but everybody seems to be on board with the new routine. I visited with the auditors when they were here. They won't audit this process till next year, but I kind of showed them in our system how the approval train is all electronic, and they liked what they saw as far as that aspect of it. And again, this just outlines the requisition purchasing process.
So my question, hold on, my question that I sent to you guys, I know you responded, but unfortunately I didn't make it to yours, and I was starting to get confused with your response. So can you just tell me what is different about
Bulk purchasing, Sarah sent me an email. A teacher was concerned about not I wasn't unclear because I didn't have all the information, but I got the impression a teacher was concerned about ordering an item and not getting the best price, or maybe she decided not to order an item.
Well, they ended up placing it school by school, but there would have been a discount, they realized, had it been done.
Well, but we need to know that. We'll coordinate that, but we can't coordinate it if we don't know.
Okay, so there is a way around that?
Yes, just like in the response I brought up, clay. All the art teachers, every year at the beginning of the year, coordinate their order for clay, because the shipping's reduced, and sometimes depending upon how much they order, the rate is reduced. And so, even in that instance, the buildings will do their own requisitions because we want the approval to go through the building principal, but we coordinate all the requisitions together with that vendor.
So who actually makes the purchase? I mean, is that somebody sending you guys an email to say this is how we want to handle this? Or-
Well, it depends upon the instance. In the instance of the clay, Renee Booth, the treasurer, the accounts payable person, coordinated them all and gave all the POs. But it depends. That's not necessarily uniform. You know, Brian Drennan coordinated ordering iPads. You know, so it's not a clear-cut answer, but we need to know, you know, some of it's them educating us. Because even in the past, before we changed this, we wouldn't have ordered it. You know, the purchase orders still would have been separate in the past. That part didn't change.
So what's the best way to communicate that?
A phone call, an email, going through your principal, the teachers coordinating, you know, the art teachers did it on their own. We didn't.
So maybe the principals need to make sure all staff members know the bulk purchases among the schools are certainly an option,
And they should know that.
Communicate to the staff.
Not an option, it should be a priority.
I know, and that's what concerned me.
Well, see, the approval chain, all the people that things hit, and see, just like in the request you're referring to, I check requisitions, and people could attest. Sometimes they get upset that I will question a requisition when it seems cut and dry to them. But I haven't seen anything come across that seemed debatable as far as a bulk purchase and a possible reduced rate, or that should be held off until we do a bid, because we'll still bid certain items. So
And
I,
I think the problem is, we just have 5 elementary schools, we just have everybody kind of in their own world. And it's just.
And on the classroom-
Collaboration, we don't have the.
And on the classroom level-
Communicate to.
The principals are getting better about that. I mean, even something as simple as the student planners. I mean, just having that conversation, how many do you need? One principal orders them all to get, the cheapest price for the quantity that the whole district needs. What type of materials are you talking about?
I'd rather not say.
That's right. That's all right.
And if I can add too, we have a whole list of things that we do annually, for copy paper, for printers, for printing items, for envelopes and stationery, and we send that out to the schools and say, what are your needs for this upcoming year, and then we bid it all together. So there is a master list of things that we continuously do, but if it is a school or, the department chair in art, for example, could coordinate that through the purchasing department. If they notice a need, or Cheryl even sees that multiple purchases are coming through, she'll even, contact them. So yes, it is communication, but nothing has changed in that regard. I mean,
Really, we need a best practice mentality of every purchase. Somebody needs to be asking the question, is this an opportunity for a full purchase with other schools?
but there's a fine line there too. Sorry.
But we have a state contract. I mean, what availability is there to, each building principal on that? Or is it just something that is only available to a couple of people? And even if it's not available, back when I was with an entity that did that, or used the state contract, and there's a printout of all those items that might be purchased. That's been quite some time ago, so maybe that's not the way to do it now. It would seem that you would have those options.
And the schools would, but often we don't meet, and see, that's an issue, often we don't meet the quantity or the quota of some of those pricing options. And again, I'm really done.
I think oftentimes it's probably not a lot of dollars, but to somebody at that school with their activity fund, or whatever we're calling it.
And the activity fund, we don't deal with, that's strictly at the school level.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that-
Just use that, whatever
yeah.
the budget is, but the point is, we need everybody trying to stretch every dollar.
Yeah, I'm sorry that more funds got spent on something that could have been saved on. It wasn't caught at any approval level. I mean, it starts at the classroom, secretaries enter it, principals approve it, and then it comes up to the board office for either Tracy or I to approve, and if something came through that we thought it should have been in bulk, it certainly wasn't caught.
Okay. So Dean, I guess this question back to you or Tracy, I don't know, can we just reiterate
We do.
each building level that, because this just happened in the last 2 weeks.
Well, isn't everything, not everything, but wouldn't you think 90% is duplicity? I mean, are we using different photos at every grade school for each child? Are we using different agendas? I mean, you'd think that would all be the same across the board. I put a Roosevelt flyer in one, I put a Wilson flyer in the other. Is it not? Honestly, is it different per school?
Some of it. We are trying to make it, this will cause a fire. We're trying to make a lot of it closer to the same, yeah.
Could we agree on one?
I know.
Especially when you're talking like a planner, I mean, maybe everybody likes a different one, but couldn't we agree on?
Yeah, now that
It's
is,
not free money.
that is standard,
take it the best we can.
standardized, earphones, all of those things. I mean, we try to coordinate, if we know about it, it's going to be coordinated, it's just sometimes we don't know.
And the earphones is a prime example. That was another thing we just recently coordinated, was purchasing of earphones.
Yeah.
Do we not have anything in place? When I worked with Fort Hayes, they had what they called their warehouse. And basically, any item you put in to purchase had to be approved through warehouse first, because they basically had a listing of basically any consumable item you could ever possibly purchase
Right.
at that rate. If you outside of that, you actually have to put in for approval to be outside.
In my tenure here, we've never done warehousing because of the amount of staff hours it would take to warehouse the amount of items we would use. I'm not saying we shouldn't, we could visit about it, but
So the warehouse is pretty much right out there, isn't it? And that, all the room we really have for anything?
It's full.
Yeah. It's full.
well, they store the large items like paper, for instance. You know, we do warehouse those items and require staff to request how many items they need. So the big items we do purchase in bulk, or custodial items, we do warehouse, but, you know, we don't warehouse pens, we don't warehouse rubber bands, paper clips, those type of things. And every classroom is unique and has their own needs. It'd be very difficult to coordinate and warehouse everything.
See, I have a hard time with that. Every classroom is unique, and it would be hard to coordinate. I don't understand that.
Well, it's not like they order stuff all the time. I mean, they have
Right.
things at the beginning of the year, and I think that all goes through you guys, doesn't it?
Well, everything they ordered gets cleared
Yeah,
through
but
the
I mean, I think
drive.
that's coordinated some shape or form in their building, but
When do they order?
programs you can do that. I mean, that, I don't know, I want to say school specialty, Staples, have a program, you go online, and the whole district is on that.
But currently what you're saying is the
But-
classroom selects their own items.
Well,
To a certain extent, yes. I'm not going to let a classroom spend $50 on candy, but, you know, every building is unique, and every classroom is unique, and do we want to take away from that uniqueness, that individuality?
But let's talk about food. The pens were brought up before, and Kleenexes are another item. I mean, and maybe those are all brought by kids now, I think they are, but if we said, you know, we're going to use big pens, they're the cheapest ones we can get. Here's a pen, it writes, it does what you need. This is the base level that we're going to provide. If you need a special pen because you don't like it, then you're going to have to provide that
Right.
yourself, just like we tell kids.
I'm not saying we can't do that, we just don't do that right now.
And you made a comment, do we take away the individuality? Well, I understand what individuality would take away, but I do believe that we absolutely must maintain the integrity of the dollars being spent.
Oh, absolutely.
So at what point does it become a building expense versus becoming a district expense? You know, take, Rusty's here. We might use 5,000 anchors of some kind for the walls in each school. The individual school shouldn't be purchasing those. We should be purchasing those bulk. We know how many we're going to use approximately every year. Let's maintain the savings. Wouldn't that make the most sense? I think it would. I guess, I don't know, I need to look at this a little farther. Or maybe I'm misunderstanding it.
what is their budget right now?
Specifically who?
Yeah, teachers.
Teachers, it depends.
150.
Yeah, 150.
And I know we are buying things in bulk if we're using something consistently across the district, absolutely.
So we got all the, like Fastenal, we got those programs in line, we're using them the best we can for our light bulbs, stuff like that, that's finally in gear here.
Yes.
Good. But we're moving that way, we're getting that process put in. Okay.
The teacher supplies are, I mean, it's a little more difficult. You don't know if they need tape. They spend most of the money, most of the things they have in their room are coming out of their own pocket. I mean, honestly.
But if
I
we
don't
look-
know, it would be,
But if we looked at that $150 expense, and, we know, we've got enough history on this, so many students in a room, how much X you're going to use for stuff. Should the teachers, should they be responsible for buying tape? Or if we can capitalize on savings, can't we put all that into one pool?
sure you could. Just coordinating that and knowing what they need. I couldn't tell you what they need now.
No, but without, Sunday does, we do it every day for years.
But yeah, that's the direction we're heading. What we're trying to do is coordinate all those, it's like the planners, anything like that, that we know we're going to do the same things. But, so.
Any further questions? Are we ready to make a motion? Can I make a motion?
Yeah.
I'd like to move that we approve the purchasing procedures to update the district's classified employee handbook and administrator handbook.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Rankin. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Board Member Patterson. Any questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Action item D, adoption of Board of Education SMART goals for 2014-15.
Mr. President, I want to table this for this evening. We need to spend some more time administratively on our set of goals. We do have a list started, but I'm not comfortable giving that right now and then coming back later and say, oh, we need to change this. So we'll have that next meeting.
Well, I guess this is an action item. It is? Okay. Does anybody want to make the motion to table?
I'll make the motion to table 10B, the adoption of Board of Education SMART goals on Dean Katz's request.
Second.
Can you these brings it to the board?
November meeting. November.
November board meeting? Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Patterson to table this until the next board meeting in November. A second by Board Member Waddell. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. On to item E, Rockwell Administration Center roof bid. Dean, do you want to take over?
We did turn this in, or send this out to four, I guess, Rusty, you said four people actually, or four companies. We did receive a bid from High Plains. For the roof, what I'm recommending, or Rusty's recommending, is do the ballast roof from High Plains for this building at $38,843, and for the west side building for $29,951, total of $68,794. And this roof does come with a 20-year warranty. It is the cheapest of the three that we had them bid. I think it would be in our best interest to go the cheapest route. It's still under warranty. So that's my recommendation. Rusty, do you have anything you want to add, or?
No, I agree fully with where we're at with the building and stuff, but I was concerned at first about it. They were going to reuse the ballast to help keep the cost down, and we were concerned at first about the warranty, but they did check on that, and they will go ahead and do the 20-year warranty using the same ballast, and that's part of what's helping keep the cost down on it, so.
And all work's going to be done this summer?
No, we were really trying to get it done yet this year. With the type of roof system it is, we should be able to do it.
Okay. Is there a motion on the table?
I would move to accept the low bid from High Plains Roofing for the, is it ballasted EPDM, or is it, and for west side?
Second.
Okay. Motion by Board Member Schwartz, seconded by Board Member Lang. Any discussion?
I would just request when we put the agenda together, if we put the summary sheet first, just at the top instead of after the bids.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Is it 45 mil or 60 mil EPDM? 20-year warranty on the 45, huh? Nice.
That's a good thing.
That's what I was asking.
Okay. Well, I wondered if that had something to do with the cost being down. Total roofing squares? Do you know offhand?
I don't know, man, that is one time that doesn't.
Was it buried in there somewhere? Probably. That's all right. I'll find it here. And then the email glitch, that old deal's kind of been worked out.
Yeah, as soon as as soon as I was aware of what took place, Ken and I talked about that, and we decided that we would follow up with a conventional letter to them advising that we had emailed them the specs so that they were aware of it.
Okay.
Or follow up with a phone call or both. but
Okay.
We're going to follow up somehow.
All right.
Any other questions?
Then
Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. On to discussion by board members and agenda requests.
45 million.
Anybody have any requests?
I didn't think you could get a 20-year on 45 million.
We have had 2 incidents.
Great.
One required treatment and was under the $2,500 deductible, and the other one did not require treatment.
Okay. So we're doing a lot better this year.
Doing really good so far. Pardon me?
Due to the HR department that you're heading up?
I think it is I know absolutely it is the knowledge of everybody and the awareness of all the staff. You know, they're the ones who are doing the hard work. But the safety committee, you know, we're really excited about that, and I think it's going in definitely a very good direction.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Any others? Okay, well, I would move on to item 12, executive session. And I would make the motion that the board only move into executive session for personnel matters to include the evaluation of Superintendent Cat. Any seconds? Oh, sorry about that. For 30 minutes to begin at 9:30 and conclude at 10 p.m.
Second.
Seconded by Board Member Patterson. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0.
There used to be like a way where you could search for a word. I don't know.
Was it spec'd out at 45?